It's important to winterize your boat to make it easier to get your boat out of storage in the spring.
What is the benefits of me bringing my boat here versus me doing it myself?
So we go through the boat and we inspect every part of the boat from the motor right up to the bow. We make sure that there are going to be no major issues, and if there are major issues, we make sure we give you a call.
Hamlin's has a system where we have drivers, so if you don't have your own trailer, the drivers will go and pick your boat up at your house, the lake that you have the boat at, and they'll bring it back here.
So the driver picks the boat up at the landing, he brings it into the drop-off area. He will chalk the wheel, he will unhook from the truck, he'll remove all his straps, everything that he had in order to tow it safely, and he will tag it, which is very crucial to the business. That tells us exactly whose boat it is, work order number, name. It tells us the cleaning that's involved in this. Then I will pick it up, bring it to the wash bay or the wash line, and then it will go from there into the service bays to get serviced. Then it goes down back to be put to bed, per se, for the year, and then the exact opposite when it comes out of storage time. We'll take it out of the rack, bring it back up, touch the cleaning back up, bring it back into the service to have the out of storage done on that, and then ready for delivery.
So we put all our boats inside for the winter. We make sure there's no extra moisture. We also make sure that there's no rodents that are going to be getting in and chewing anything up, damaging anything. We also make sure that there's no water that's going to freeze and cause an issue in any water lines or water systems in the boat as well. So this motor, as a marine engine, is more sophisticated than the motor that's in your car. This motor requires specific Yamaha diagnostic software to make sure that it's going to run properly from season to season. So here at Hamlin's, we keep a maintenance record of your boat and your motor. As Yamaha's #1 service center in New England, we know what parts need to be replaced at what service intervals to make sure that your boat stays 100% from season to season. This motor is a perfect example on why you should be bringing your boat to Hamlin's Marine every year for winterization. This motor had over 500 hours on it and it had non-OEM parts. Once your motor gets to that high number of hours, it is even more important to be doing your yearly services and your 3-year services. We also found that the gear case fluid was very dirty and very burnt, indicating it hadn't been changed in quite a while. So this boat does not have a fuel water separator. A fuel water separator pulls water out of your fuel as the motor is running. It's very important to have that changed every year. If not, you can run into water intrusion in your fuel and in your motor throughout the summer. When the boat first comes into the bay, we get our engine oil and our gear case fluid draining. While the fluids are draining, we inspect the drain plugs and the gaskets to make sure there was no issues over the summer. We also inspect your prop, we inspect the cotter pin, make sure there's no issues there. Once we get everything inspected, make sure everything's all set, we go ahead and refill everything. We also replace the gaskets on the drain plugs just to be sure that next summer there won't be any issues. We also change your engine oil filter every year. So once we get our engine oil and gear case fluid changed, we move on to the fuel side of your motor. We change the fuel filter and the fuel filter bowl. We also drain off whatever gas is left over in the VST, your high pressure fuel pump. We also make sure the fuel has no water in it. A lot of times marine fuel tanks will build up condensation. We want to make sure that that is not going to cause an issue for you in the spring. So once we get the fuel drained out of your VST, we pump a storage mix fuel into the motor. That storage mix prevents separation in the fuel. It also coats everything in the motor, and it keeps fuel, the little bit of fuel remaining, from separating that's going to be in your fuel rail or the little bit that's left in your fuel lines. So after we run the motor, we change the spark plugs, we check your oil level one more time, We also grease all the fittings on the motor, up here on the front, down here on the bracket as well. We clean your steering shaft to make sure that there's not going to be any corrosion that's going to cause you any steering issues later on. We hook up our Yamaha diagnostic software. We get your engine hours. We make sure there were no trouble codes throughout the season. If there were trouble codes, that's when we'd go in and address the issue. We also do an inspection of the motor, make sure there won't be any issues further down the line. So the last thing we do when we winterize your motor is we drain your motor flush. It will hold a little bit of water, so we make sure that there's no water in that hose to keep it from freezing. It will cause an issue if it's not drained. So the bottom line is we now know that this motor is completely ready to go for the spring, and all we need to do in the spring is do the final check, fire it, and make sure it's ready to go, and delivered to the customer.
So after the motor gets serviced, we step up inside the boat. From bow to stern, we inspect every component on the boat to make sure it's working properly. The first thing we're going to do is check all my switches and gauges and turn these on, verify my horn's working. Then I'm going to walk to the front of the boat and verify that my nav lights are working correctly. I'm going to come back, check to make sure that my anchor light is working correctly as well. Then I'm going to also make sure that my radio is working properly. Also, when the radio is on, I'm going to go around and put my hand on each speaker to make sure that each speaker is working correctly. I'm going to check to make sure that my RPMs are reading correctly, along with my fuel gauge, my voltmeter, and my trim meter. So, as the motor is running, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to verify that the steering linkage is working properly. Also, I'm going to shift the motor into forward, neutral, and reverse to verify that it is shifting correctly, as well as pulling the safety lanyard and making sure the kill switch is working. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check all the upholstery for rips and tears, as well as checking inside each compartment. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect the floor. In this case it is carpet, so I'm going to inspect for rips and tears, excessive mildew or mold. In this case we'd call the customer and recommend a floor cleaning. I'm going to come back here towards the bimini frame. I'm going to take the bimini boot off, open it up completely, verify that there's no mildew, mold, rips or tears, or excessive water inside the bimini. And the last thing I'm going to do while I'm inside the boat is I'm going to disconnect the battery, make sure it's labeled properly, charge, and then put into storage. The last thing I do before the boat leaves the bay is I'm going to do one last walk around the boat. I'm going to verify all hardware is good, from the bimini to the snaps. I'm also going to check the pontoons themselves, verify there's no scrapes, dings, or holes inside the tunes. I'm going to verify that there's no hanging wires underneath the boat. We'd also check your tongue, latch, and safety chains as well. And if you don't happen to have a trailer, no worries. We'll come to you, we'll pick up your boat, we'll bring it back here, we'll service your engine, check the interior, the exterior of the boat, and none of these things will have to be your worries. The only thing you will have to do is enjoy your boat.
Okay, so now the boat is in the wash bay. The detail asked for semi-clean, so that includes the tunes. So what she is going to do is acid wash the tunes and then clean the exterior of the boat and clean the interior of the boat. This won't take her a long time, but she will do a good job at doing it. Now what happens, we bring this in the building, we drop it down on the ground, we're capable of that. We put a bag over the motor, just in case there's any oil leaking or anything like that that might happen, for protection, so it don't drip down into another boat per se. Then they'll get up in here, they'll drop everything to the lowest point, as being like this. Your bimini, they'll drop that as low as it can. They'll take this windshield off, they'll lean the seat back, then they will pick that up with the forklift and put it right up in that hole, as you can see, all the way down through. They'll slide them right in, and that's where it will sit for the winter. So just like that, the boat is put to bed. You'll see it in the spring.